Hey writers! The very first professional feedback I got at the age of 14 from an editor at Scholastic Books was that my dialogue was excellent. Over the years, for reasons that I will explain later in this video, I have kind of lost the sort of genius that I seem to have naturally had at the beginning of my writing journey. So what happened? How come I kind of lost track with the dialogue? Stick with me to the end as we break down what dialogue is, what it isn't, and how to succeed at writing it. Because dialogue is the fun bit. Dialogue is the part that the readers read quickly through. They slow down in exposition. If it's too clunky, they will put the book down. Dialogue equals character. Neil Gaiman says that dialogue and character are like the two legs that your character stands on. You cannot have one without the other. And I realize that's a bit of an ableist analogy, but please bear with me, it was not mine, and I cannot think of another way to express it. When you are creating a character, that character will have a certain way of speaking. Everything they say will come from that character, will come from who they are, what they want, where they're going, their motivation. Everything comes back to character. As we go through this list, everything comes back to that. If that's the only takeaway you take away, then take that away. But every element of this list is designed to help you and help me realize that this is not that hard. It's actually really easy. It is up there with the fundamental truths that storytellers know. And what happens is we try too hard to try and be clever with our dialogue. And that it doesn't work without the authenticity of who that character is and what that scene needs. So as we go through this list, I will give you 10 different elements of what dialogue is. And then at the end of that list, I will give you tools and tricks on how to find out and how to troubleshoot your dialogue that isn't working and how to know if it actually is working. And so stick with me to the end, because there are some really great methods that I have used to test out my dialogue. But it comes back to this idea of character, and you're going to hear me say it again and again and again, so write that down. And let me know which of these tips and tricks you believe in most, and which ones were really sort of aha moments for you in the comments below. What do your characters want? Everybody wants something. Nobody says anything without wanting something. Even if what they want is to be understood, they want that for a reason. They want that person to understand them because they're going to get something out of that. Even if they want to explain something to somebody, they want something out of that. Maybe they want to explain it so that they themselves feel superior. Maybe they want to explain it because they want that person to do something for them. Maybe they're explaining something so that they can put somebody on their side so they don't feel alone. They want connection, they want revenge, they want reprieve. They are tired, they are stressed, they are angry, they are scared. They are happy, they are sad. What do they want? When you can find that, you can find the meaning of the scene and the meaning of what they're saying. Dialogue is the mask that people wear. What people very rarely say what they actually mean. You might have heard people talk about subtext. When writers talk about subtext, it's almost as if they are forgetting what subtext is, and they are over-explaining. And I feel like when we talk as writers, when we write without subtext, it's harder to understand what's actually going on, because we're used to, when people talk, to not actually saying what they mean. And it can be exhausting when you have characters, one after another, after another, after another, saying exactly what they mean. And just like that, most recent episode, Carrie is meeting up with Aiden after years and years of not seeing him. And she keeps stating exactly how she feels about it. I want to see a scene where Carrie can't choose her shoes. I remember when she was meeting up with Big.
Hello, lover. Oh, please, I'm just getting around picking the shoes.
Basically, what she's saying is, I can't think about that yet. But if she said, I can't think about that, it'd be less nuanced. At the end of that episode, when Miranda's water breaks, they breaks all over her shoes and ruins them, bringing this conversation full circle. So imagine Carrie is pulling everything out of her closet. Everything is the shoes everywhere. And one of the characters comes in, what are you doing? I'm trying to pick shoes for tonight. And you can tell she's nervous. She doesn't have to say she's nervous. You can tell because there's a room full of shoes and she doesn't know what shoes to wear. There needs to be conflict in your writing, and there needs to be conflict in every scene, and there needs to be conflict in your dialogue. Now, whether that is conflict between what a character is saying and what they are actually thinking, or whether it's conflict between two characters who are saying different things and having an argument, or whether it is conflict that is being brought up because of a conversation, because of an overheard conversation, because of hurt feelings. There needs to be conflict, and if there's no conflict, then it's going to be far less interesting. You could have everybody just agree and go along, but that's boring. You want to have some kind of argument happening, some kind of disalignment between two characters, even if it's just subtle. There's a rhythm to the way the people talk. I know a lot of people don't have a lot of love for Shakespeare, but that iambic pentameter, that rhythm, it's natural. People talk in a certain way. And a lot of times in writing, we don't think about that because you don't read the same way you write. I, for a long time, would use really long sentences, and I would not break them up. And my husband once said to me that he couldn't catch his breath. And I'm like, what do you mean you can't catch your breath? It's in your head. You're not talking. But when people read, and this is something that I had to learn being dyslexic, because I ignore punctuation for the most part because it doesn't mean a lot to me. But for the most part, when people read, they read the punctuation and they need it to take a breath, even if that breath is only in their thoughts. I like to write humor. It's fun. I don't always read funny books. I don't put them down as often. I want a book that'll either scare me or make me laugh, preferably both. I think for a joke to be good, it needs to be authentic to the character. You don't want just a joke in there because it's a joke. Some of the funniest things in David Lynch, who is the master of funny and horror and putting them together. He has Dale Cooper deliver some really dark stuff and then talk like a child about the beauty of trees. And it's just, in anybody else's mouth, it would be ridiculous. But because he really does love the trees and he does have that childlike attitude, it's hilarious. Inigo paced the cliff edge, fingers snapping. 50 feet below him now, the man in black still climbed. Inigo's impatience was grinning to a bubble beyond control. He stared down at the slow progress. "Hello there," Inigo hollered when he could wait no more. The man in black glanced up and grunted. "I've been watching you." The man in black nodded. "Slow going," Inigo said. "Look, I don't mean to be rude," the man in black said finally, "but I'm rather busy just now, so try not to distract me." "I'm sorry," Inigo said. The man in black grunted again. "I don't suppose you could speed things up," Inigo said. "If you want to speed things up so much," the man in black said, clearly quite angry now, "you could lower a rope or a tree branch or find some other helpful thing to do." "I could do that," Inigo agreed, "but I don't think you would accept my help since I'm only waiting up here so that I can kill you." "That does put a damper on our relationship," the man in black said then. "I'm afraid you'll just have to wait." 43 feet now. 41. "I could give you my word as a Spaniard," Inigo said. "No good," the man in black replied. "I've known too many Spaniards." "I'm going crazy up here," Inigo said. "Anytime you want to change places, I'd be too happy to accept." 39 feet, and resting. The man in black just hung in space, feet dangling, the entire weight of his body supported by the strength of his hand jammed into the crevice. "Come along now," Inigo pleaded. "It's been a bit of a climb," the man in black explained, "and I'm weary. I'll be fine in a quarter hour or so." Another quarter hour. Inconceivable. "Look, I've got a piece of extra rope up here. I'll just drop it down and you grab hold and I'll pull you up." "No good," the man in black repeated. "You might pull, but then again, you might also let go, which, since you're in a hurry to kill me, would certainly do the job quickly. But you wouldn't have ever known I was going to kill you if I hadn't been the one to tell you. Doesn't that let you know I can be trusted, frankly? And I hope you won't be insulted." "No," There's no way you'll trust me? Nothing comes to mind. Suddenly Inigo raised his hand. I swear on the soul of Domingo Montoya, you will reach the top alive. Throw me the rope. Is your dialogue emotionally charged? Like, you're telling a story, and if there's no emotion, then why is it there? I always think about the end of the Harry Potter books. We'd have this sort of denouement moment where Dumbledore would come in and explain the plot. I'm just like, ready for the next book. A lot of the earlier conversations in the book were much more emotionally charged. I think about some of the arguments between Ron and Hermione. But by the end of the book, those info dumps were not emotionally charged. And I mean, the woman is a huge success. So even, take that with a grain of salt. But I feel like you can have a very good bit of information put into dialogue, or you can have an emotionally charged scene between two characters and your audience knows what happens at the end. This is actually the one that I think is what I got right when I was 14. What Neil Gaiman calls give your characters funny hats. When he says funny hats, he doesn't mean an actual funny hat. What he means is that you give a character a unique voice, a unique element. Your audience isn't trying to figure out who is speaking. They know who's speaking. This could be a word that they always say. It could be a belief. If you know your characters, as we said earlier, giving them a funny hat should be easy.
Down the sauce. Allons-y! Oh, I can't wait. Allons-y.
I'm sorry?
French. So let's go. Polarity of the neutron flow.
A jelly baby. Would you like a jelly baby? Anyone for jelly baby?
Fantastic.
And you knew that character was talking, even if you weren't listening to his voice, even if you read it on the page, even if you had no dialogue tags, you knew it was him because he always said that. Great. Now, giving a sort of different feel to your dialogue is a great way. Like, you don't always have your characters sitting and talking at one another in a cafe. If you have them doing an action, this could be two characters at a crime scene who are having a conversation unrelated to the crime scene, but they're walking around a crime scene. The juxtaposition of two workmates talking about their family life might be an interesting, actually I might use that, way of letting you know about these characters, especially if they're walking around something very gruesome. This is a great tool for action novels, crime novels, but you could even do it in a contemporary novel. You could have two people making dinner and they could be having a great conversation. I remember in Pride and Prejudice, there's this classic scene, the dance at Netherfield. Darcy and Elizabeth dance together, and they're having this very antagonistic, nasty conversation, but they're doing these beautiful movements and dancing together, beautiful rhythm and symmetry, but they're basically having an argument and accusing one another of nasty things. And that is just a wonderful juxtaposition. And so thinking about that is a great way to play with dialogue. Other ways you can play with it is you can have an overheard conversation. Someone's hiding in a closet, someone's in a bathroom stall at a high school. You're sitting in a cafe and you overhear people talking about something. You might also have a phone conversation, a phone call. You might have one side of the phone call, not the other. So there's different ways to have conversations, and the way the conversation happens to actually be a plot device. You might also have a lecture hall, especially if you're doing like a crime drama. You might have the police chief gather all the officers together to give an info dump. Zootopia is my example for a crime procedural that does this a couple of times at the beginning of the movie and at the end of the movie, where the police chief gives all the assignments out to the officers. You could also have an argument where two characters are arguing. People can yell exposition, I once heard say. It's a great way to use an argument to give exposition to your audience, because it becomes an accusatory statement. You did this, and suddenly your audience knows, well, that character did that, or at least that character believes that character did that. Another is pillow talk, and this is a great way to deliver dialogue because people tend to be more honest or more deceptive depending on your characters in a bedroom situation. So just think about what your characters are doing in the delivery of the dialogue, which can add a whole other layer to your dialogue. Accuracy and appropriateness. So I put these hand in hand, even though they're huge topics. They're really, really big. So if you're writing a crime procedural, medical procedural, a historical novel, if you're writing anything that will have a different language. I'm recording. Please stop going to sleep. Thank you. Any kind of historical, people don't speak the same way now that they spoke 100 years ago or even 20 years ago. People don't speak the same casually as they do when they're at work. People use different languages in different spheres. It is really important to be authentic to this, and I would do your research, and I would also get a beta reader who knows this. For my Nano project, I am planning to try my first real-world contemporary crime fiction. I've written crime fiction before, but it was fantasy, so I can make things up. This one's going to be a real-world one, and I've already lined up a reader who can check my authenticity, and that is key. And this and other tips about how to make sure you're accurate is really good. But I also want to talk about appropriateness. So if you're writing for a YA audience or a middle grade audience, then your language will be different than if you're writing a bodice ripper. You can use different language. And so you want to make sure that the cover, the market, the audience that you are attracting is an audience that's going to respond to the language that you're using. You don't want to use flowery description and vocabulary that will not be accessible to a middle grade reader. This may seem like, duh, Joe, but so many times I see this. I see that, and it's jarring to the reader when you're reading something and it's not accurate, and the language isn't right, and it's really, really important. And this is where we get into the tips and tricks. So we're going to move into that, and the reasons you're not succeeding at these rules, and what to do about it and how to fix it.